Today's video is the first one of a new series, and in this series I'll be working on the topic of making cords or ropes in wet felting. Along the years I've been teaching wet felting, I've gotten an enormous number of emails asking me questions on how to solve a couple of different problems that tend to show up when you're making cords. So the goal of this series is to go through all these questions so that you're able to solve all the issues once and for all. Now, making these thin cords or making these nice fat ropes that are used for handles on bags may have different issues. So I'm also going to talk about them separately. Today we're going to start by looking at how to make these skinny cords that you can use to close pieces, as I did here, for example. And what I want to show you today in particular is how to make this the easy way. If you want to make your cords in an easy way, the first thing I recommend is that you avoid bubble wrap and instead use a base like a rubber mat or a bamboo mat. And the reason is both the rubber mat and the bamboo mat create much more friction than the bubble wrap. And to make the ropes the way that I make them, it is really important to have a base that creates a lot of friction. And you'll see why in a moment. So I'm going to put this away for now, and I'm going to work on my rubber mat. The next thing I want to have a look at is how you separate the wool that you're going to need. So first of all, I think you know this already, but in case you don't, to separate the piece of wool you need from the rest of your wool top, you need to have quite some distance between your hands because each individual fiber is actually long. Right? Can you see this? So if you have your hands too close to each other, because the fibers are long, it'll be very, very difficult to pull out the piece of fiber you want. So the best thing to do is to have your hands apart about, let's say, 10 centimeters. And then when you pull the wool, it breaks in the middle. Okay? Now this is in terms of length, but how do you know how much wool you need to pull off from your top? Let's say you want to make a thin cord like this. How would you decide how much wool to pull off? Watch this. You can pull off a little bit, and then you need to twist your wool like this. Okay? And this will give you the final dimension of your cord. So as you can see, it's about the same. Alright, so if you want to make a cord this thin, you need to pull off this amount of wool. So now remember that wool always shrinks when felted. So let's say you have this piece of wool, count on having a shrinkage of about 20 to 30%, more 30% rather. Okay, so if you start with this length, you will end up with something like this. Okay, so now that I've pulled off my fiber, let's get started. Now, I told you I was going to show you the easy way to make cords. And what do I mean by this? What I see people do online often is they have a length of wool, and then I see them doing a layout like this. And then afterwards, they wrap this piece of wool on these fibers that are laying on the mat. Now the idea behind this, of course, is to crisscross your fibers. And if that's what you do and you're successful with it, go ahead and do it the way you've always done. There are no right or wrong recipes in wet felting. You do whatever works for you. But I promised you I was going to show you the easy way to do this. So actually you don't need these fibers. You can work with just this and get a perfect rope out of the wool laid in just one direction. Okay, and that's how I work. Now the next thing that is important after you've guaranteed you have a mat that creates a lot of friction is to avoid using too much water. If you add too much water to your fiber, what happens is that it soaks it up, it becomes flat, and then it becomes nearly impossible to felt it without having wrinkles on the surface. Okay, if you want to avoid having wrinkles on a surface when you're making a cord, the big trick is, aside from having a surface that creates a lot of friction, the second trick is to have just a little bit of water. And what I do is I put some water on my mat. I also put some soap on my mat, which can be done like this or by using some liquid soap as well. And I spread out my water so that I guarantee that the wool doesn't soak up too much at once. And I start rolling my wool on my water gently, and then on the dry surface. And when I need more water, I grab it from here and then I rub it on the dry surface. This way you always have the right amount of water in your fiber, so it doesn't get soaked. All you need to do now is to rub your wool on your rubber mat or on your bamboo mat. If you're working on the bamboo mat, this is how I do it. I fold my bamboo mat on top of my piece and just roll it like this. So as you can see, this provides much more friction than you would get on a bubble wrap. So aside from being a lot faster, this avoids ever getting any type of wrinkle on the surface of your felt. So either use your bamboo mat or a rubber mat and just go on until you've felted the piece the way you want to. And here you are. This was the easy way to felt cords with wool tops. And next week I'll be back with the topic of cords. This time on how to make thicker cords like the ones you use for your bag handles. And if you've started wet felting recently and you're feeling a little bit lost about the next step in your wet felting journey, you can download the guide I've prepared for you. All you have to do is click on the link below to download it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.